The date is June 6, 1944. St. Margals, Normandy, France. Paratrooper Staff Sergeant Harrison Summers of the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment crashes through the hedgerow, his M1 carbine clutched against his chest. He's just landed 2 miles off target in the pre-dawn darkness of D-Day. Around him, the crack of German Mauser rifles echoes through the Norman countryside. He needs to move fast, find his unit, complete his mission. But there's a problem that's been plaguing American airborne forces since their first combat jump in North Africa 18 months earlier. A problem that's already killed dozens of paratroopers before they even fired a shot. Summers' carbine is intact, but he's one of the lucky ones. Across the drop zones of Normandy that morning, more than 380 paratroopers land with broken, bent, or completely destroyed rifle stocks. The wooden furniture of their M1 carbines shatters on impact, rendering their primary weapons useless. Some men land in trees, their carbines swinging violently against branches. Others experience hard landings in the darkness, their weapons taking the full force of impact against stone walls, roads, and farm equipment. The statistics are devastating. In the 82nd and 101st Airborne Division's D-Day operations, approximately 23% of all M1 carbines carried by paratroopers suffered damage during the jump. That's nearly 1 in 4 weapons rendered inoperable before a single shot is fired at the enemy.
What these men don't know as they struggle through the hedgerows of France is that back in the United States, a solution to their problem already exists. A solution so simple, so obvious, that the Army's Ordnance Department has spent 2 years calling it absurd, impractical, and a waste of resources. They don't know that one stubborn engineer with no military experience has been fighting a bureaucratic war to save their lives. And they certainly don't know that his ridiculous modification will eventually become standard equipment on one of America's most iconic firearms. The M1 carbine enters service in 1942 as a revolutionary concept designed by Winchester engineer David Marshall Williams. The lightweight semi-automatic rifle weighs just 5.2 pounds, half the weight of the standard M1 Garand. It fires a .30 caliber cartridge from a 15-round detachable magazine. The weapon is intended for officers, vehicle crews, artillery personnel, and support troops who need something more effective than a pistol, but lighter than a full battle rifle. The carbine proves immediately popular with American forces. By early 1943, production reaches 150,000 units per month across multiple contractors. The weapon's light recoil, compact size, and rapid-fire capability make it ideal for close-quarters combat. Paratroopers particularly favor the carbine for its maneuverability in the tight confines of aircraft and its effectiveness in the hedgerow fighting of Europe. But the M1 carbine has a fatal flaw that reveals itself during airborne operations. The rifle's stock and handguard are made from American walnut. In normal infantry use, the wooden furniture performs adequately. But airborne operations subject weapons to forces far beyond normal combat stress. When a 190-pound paratrooper exits a C-47 at 120 miles per hour, then experiences the violent opening shock of his parachute deploying, everything attached to his body becomes a potential projectile. The M1 carbine, typically carried in a padded case strapped to the paratrooper's leg, swings wildly during descent. Upon landing, especially hard landings in high winds or emergency situations, the weapon often strikes the ground with tremendous force. The walnut stock, despite its density, simply cannot withstand these repeated impacts. After the disastrous Operation Husky in Sicily during July 1943, where 82nd Airborne paratroopers report a 31% weapon damage rate, the Army attempts several solutions. They redesign the carrying case with additional padding. They issue instructions for paratroopers to land in specific ways to protect their weapons. They even experiment with dropping weapons separately in equipment bundles. None of these solutions work effectively. The carrying case modifications add weight and bulk. Landing techniques prove impossible to control during combat jumps in darkness and high winds. Separate equipment drops result in weapons scattered across drop zones, leaving men defenseless while they search for their rifles. By October 1943, the situation reaches crisis levels. The 101st Airborne Division, preparing for the eventual invasion of France, reports that nearly 40% of their M1 carbines require stock replacement or major repairs after training jumps.
Division Commander Major General Maxwell Taylor personally writes to the Ordnance Department, calling the situation unacceptable and potentially catastrophic for combat operations. The Army's expert consensus remains unchanged. The M1 carbine's wooden stock is the best available option. Any alternative material would add unacceptable weight, cost, or production complexity. The weapon's design is frozen. No modifications will be considered. The stakes couldn't be higher. With Operation Overlord, the invasion of France scheduled for spring 1944, American airborne forces will spearhead the largest amphibious assault in history. Thousands of paratroopers will drop behind enemy lines in darkness, miles from support. Their survival depends on their weapons functioning when they hit the ground. Frederick Samson is not a military man. The 34-year-old engineer works at the Inland Manufacturing Division of General Motors in Dayton, Ohio, one of the primary contractors producing M1 carbines for the war effort. Samson holds a degree in mechanical engineering from Purdue University, but his specialty is automotive components, not firearms. Before the war, he designed transmission housings and engine mounts for Buick sedans. When Inland converts to military production in 1942, Samson finds himself assigned to the carbine manufacturing line. His job involves quality control and minor design improvements to streamline production. It's unglamorous work, checking tolerances, identifying bottlenecks, suggesting small modifications to reduce manufacturing time by seconds. But Samson notices something that bothers him. Every week, Inland ships thousands of M1 carbines to military depots, and every week, those same depots return hundreds of weapons with shattered stocks for repair or replacement. The return rate from airborne units is particularly alarming. Samson sees the pattern in the paperwork. Broken stocks, cracked handguards, split forends, always the same failure points, always from the same units. In November 1943, Samson reads the after-action reports from Sicily and Italy. He sees the casualty figures. He reads accounts of paratroopers landing in enemy territory with useless weapons, forced to fight with pistols or captured German rifles. Something clicks in his mind. The moment of insight comes while Samson is working on an entirely different problem. He's examining a rejected carbine receiver that arrived from the forging plant with improper heat treatment. The metal has the wrong properties, too brittle in some areas, too soft in others. As he studies the flawed part, Samson thinks about the wooden stocks breaking on impact. Wood is organic, inconsistent. Every piece has different grain patterns, different densities, different weak points. Even the best walnut varies in strength. But metal can be engineered. Metal can be formed into shapes impossible with wood. Metal can be heat-treated for specific properties. Metal can absorb and distribute impact forces in ways wood never could. Samson sketches his idea during lunch break on December 3, 1943.
Instead of a solid wooden stock, what if the carbine had a folding metal stock, a tubular steel framework that could collapse for compact storage, then extend for firing? Paratroopers could carry the weapon with the stock folded, protecting it during the jump. Upon landing, they could extend the stock in seconds. The concept isn't entirely original. German paratroopers carry the FG-42 rifle with a folding stock. But the FG-42 is a specialized weapon, produced in tiny numbers. Samson's idea is different. Modify the existing M1 carbine with a simple replacement part that could be manufactured on existing equipment. He takes his sketch to his supervisor, production manager Robert Hayes, the next morning. Hayes studies the drawing for perhaps 30 seconds before pushing it back across the desk. "Fred, we make what the Army orders. We don't redesign weapons. But the breakage rate is the Army's problem, not ours. We're meeting our production quotas. That's our job." Samson doesn't give up. He knows something Hayes doesn't. He's been corresponding with his younger brother, Lieutenant James Samson, a platoon leader in the 17th Airborne Division, training at Camp McCall, North Carolina. James's letters describe the weapon's problems in vivid detail. Real soldiers, real problems, real consequences. Samson begins his unauthorized project in January 1944. Using scrap materials from the factory floor, he starts building a prototype in his garage after work. He has no official approval, no budget, no support, just his engineering knowledge, basic metalwork tools, and a stubborn conviction that he's right. The first challenge is the hinge mechanism. The stock needs to fold firmly against the weapon for carrying, but extend and lock solidly for firing. Any wobble or play in the mechanism will destroy accuracy. Samson experiments with various designs, testing each one by clamping it in a vise and striking it with a hammer. Most fail immediately. After 3 weeks and 17 failed prototypes, Samson develops a solution: a rotating collar with spring-loaded ball detents. The stock tube slides through the collar, which mounts to the rear of the carbine receiver. Ball bearings held by springs click into detents machined into the stock tube at 2 positions, folded and extended. The system is simple, reliable, and uses common manufacturing techniques. The stock itself presents another challenge. It needs to be strong enough to withstand impact, light enough not to add significant weight, and comfortable enough for accurate shooting. Samson settles on seamless steel tubing, 0.75 inches in diameter, with 0.05 inches wall thickness. He machines an adjustable shoulder rest from aluminum plate and attaches it with a simple pin mechanism. By February 12, 1944, Samson has a functional prototype. He borrows a carbine from the factory's test fire range after hours and installs his folding stock. The weapon looks radically different from the standard M1 carbine. The skeletal metal framework seems fragile compared to the solid walnut stock, but Samson knows appearances can deceive. The first test occurs in his backyard on a cold Saturday morning. Samson sets up a target at 50 yards and fires the modified carbine from various positions. The accuracy is acceptable, not quite as good as the wooden stock, but close enough for combat ranges. The folding mechanism works smoothly. The stock locks firmly in both positions with a satisfying click. Then comes the real test. Samson folds the stock, places the carbine in a padded case identical to those used by paratroopers, and drives to a local quarry. He climbs onto a 15-foot rock ledge, roughly equivalent to a paratrooper's drop height at landing, and throws the cased weapon onto the ground below, hard. He repeats this test 7 times, varying the angle and force of impact. Each time, he retrieves the weapon, extends the stock, and test fires it. The carbine functions perfectly. No damage, no bending, no failures. Samson takes his prototype to work on Monday, February 14, 1944. He shows it to Hayes along with photographs of his testing. Hayes's reaction is immediate and predictable. "That is absolutely illegal, Fred. You modified government property without authorization. You could be prosecuted." "But it works. Look at the test results." "I don't care if it flies to Berlin and shoots Hitler personally. You don't modify military weapons without Ordnance Department approval. Take that thing apart and forget you ever built it." But Samson doesn't forget. He can't. His brother's division is scheduled to deploy to England in March for final training before the invasion. James and thousands like him will jump into France with weapons that have a 1 in 4 chance of breaking on landing. Samson makes copies of his design drawings and writes a detailed technical proposal. Then, he does something that could end his career. He mails the package directly to the Ordnance Department in Washington, bypassing his company's management entirely. The response arrives 3 weeks later. On March 8, 1944, Samson receives a terse letter from Major Thomas Randolph, chief of the Small Arms Development Branch. The letter thanks him for his interesting suggestion, but explains that the M1 carbine's design has been thoroughly evaluated by expert military engineers and is considered optimal for its intended purpose. No modifications are being considered at this time. In other words, rejected. Samson refuses to accept this. He writes back, including testimonials from his brother's unit, photographs of broken carbine stocks, and detailed calculations showing how his folding stock would reduce weapon damage by an estimated 85%. He sends copies to every Ordnance Department office he can find addresses for. Most ignore him, but one officer doesn't. Lieutenant Colonel Rene Studler, a career ordnance officer stationed at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, received Samson's third letter in April 1944. Studler has a reputation as an innovator. He championed the adoption of the M1 Garand over the Springfield rifle in the 1930s, fought for the development of the bazooka anti-tank weapon, and consistently pushes for practical improvements over bureaucratic inertia.
When he reads Samson's proposal, something resonates. Studler orders Samson to send the prototype to Aberdeen for official testing. This creates an immediate problem. Samson built the prototype using borrowed government property. He confesses this to Studler in a phone call. Studler's response is characteristically direct. "Build me another one. Use your own materials. I'll handle the paperwork." The second prototype arrives at Aberdeen on April 28, 1944. Studler's testing team subjects it to brutal evaluation. They drop it from heights up to 20 feet. They strike it with hammers. They fire it thousands of rounds. They drag it through mud, sand, and water. They freeze it, bake it, and submerge it. The folding stock performs flawlessly. On May 15, 1944, Studler calls a meeting at the Ordnance Department headquarters in Washington. He invites Samson to present his design to a panel of senior officers and civilian engineers. Samson takes 2 days off work and travels to Washington by train, carrying his prototype in a battered suitcase. The presentation room in the munitions building is packed with skeptics. Major Randolph, who rejected Samson's initial proposal, sits front and center with his arms crossed. Around the conference table are colonels, lieutenant colonels, and civilian engineers from Springfield Armory and other contractors. These men have decades of combined experience in weapons design. They designed the M1 carbine. They approved its specifications. They froze its design for mass production. And now some automotive engineer from Ohio is telling them they got it wrong. Samson sets up his prototype on the table and begins his presentation. He explains the problem: 23% weapon damage rate during airborne operations. He shows photographs of broken stocks from Sicily and Italy. He presents testimonials from paratroopers. He demonstrates the folding mechanism extending and collapsing the stock smoothly. Then he shows the test data from Aberdeen. The numbers are undeniable. In drop tests simulating parachute landings, the wooden stock fails 37% of the time. The folding metal stock fails 0% of the time, not once in 200 drops. Major Randolph interrupts. Mr. Samson, your design adds complexity. It adds potential failure points. The folding mechanism could break in combat. The tubular stock could bend. The ball detents could fail. You're introducing multiple new ways for the weapon to malfunction. The testing shows your testing is inadequate. You've conducted what, a few hundred drops? We're producing 150,000 carbines per month. Any modification must be absolutely bulletproof across millions of units. Another engineer, Harold Simpson from Springfield Armory, raises his hand. There's also the manufacturing issue. We have 12 contractors producing carbines. Your modification would require retooling, new machinery, worker retraining. We'd lose weeks of production. That's tens of thousands of weapons.
We wouldn't deliver to soldiers who need them right now. Samson feels the room turning against him. These men have valid concerns. He's an outsider challenging the establishment. His design, while functional, does add complexity. Manufacturing changeover would be disruptive. But then Colonel Studler stands up. Gentlemen, I've reviewed Mr. Samson's design extensively. I've personally conducted testing at Aberdeen, and I'm going to tell you something you don't want to hear. He's right, and we're wrong. The room erupts. Multiple officers try to speak at once. Randolph's face turns red. Simpson shakes his head vigorously. Someone in the back shouts, "This is ridiculous." Studler raises his voice over the chaos. "Listen to me. We're 3 weeks from D-Day. Thousands of paratroopers are going to jump into France with weapons that have a 1 in 4 chance of breaking. That's not acceptable. That's not tolerable. That's not something we can justify to the families of men who die because their rifles didn't work. We've already addressed this with improved carrying cases," Randolph argues, "which don't work. The breakage rate hasn't changed. You know this. I know this. Everyone in this room knows this." Studler picks up Samson's prototype. "This design solves the problem. Not partially, not theoretically, actually solves it. Yes, it adds complexity. Yes, it requires manufacturing changes, but it works. And when something works in war, we use it. That's the job." The room falls silent. Studler continues, his voice caller now. "I'm not proposing we replace every carbine stock in the inventory. I'm proposing we manufacture folding stocks as optional equipment for airborne units. Soldiers who don't jump out of airplanes keep the wooden stock. Paratroopers get the folding stock. We produce it as a separate component that can be installed in the field. This compromise changes the calculation. No massive retooling, no disruption to standard production, just one additional variant for specialized use. After 2 hours of heated debate, the panel votes. The decision isn't unanimous. Randolph and 2 others vote against, but the majority approves Studler's proposal. The folding stock will enter limited production for evaluation by airborne units. But there's a catch. D-Day is 3 weeks away. The invasion can't wait for new equipment. The folding stock won't be ready in time. If you're enjoying this story of how one engineer's stubborn determination changed military history, hit that subscribe button. We tell stories like this every week. Forgotten heroes who refuse to accept impossible as an answer. And click the bell icon so you don't miss our next video about the mechanic who accidentally invented the weapon that won the tank war in Europe. The first production run of folding stocks begins in June 1944. Inland Manufacturing, with Studler's authorization, converts one assembly line to produce the new component. The initial order is modest, 5,000 units for field evaluation. Samson works directly with the production team, solving manufacturing challenges as they arise. The folding stock shipped to the 17th Airborne Division at Camp McCall on July 12, 1944. Lieutenant James Samson receives one of the first units issued to his platoon. His letter to his brother, dated July 18th, is preserved in the Airborne Museum archives. "Fred, your crazy idea actually works. The guys love it. Feels lighter, balances better, and nobody's worried about breaking their rifle anymore. You might have saved some lives here, but the real test comes in combat." September 17, 1944. Operation Market Garden, the Netherlands. The 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions jump into Holland as part of Field Marshal Montgomery's ambitious plan to seize bridges across the Rhine. It's the largest airborne operation since D-Day, with over 20,000 paratroopers dropping in daylight against prepared German positions. Among them is Private First Class Robert Cole of the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne. Cole carries an M1 carbine equipped with one of Samson's folding stocks. His after-action report, filed on September 25th, provides the first detailed combat evaluation. Jumped at 1300 hours near sun. Heavy flak, hard landing in plowed field. Carbine took full impact. I landed right on top of it. Extended stock immediately. Weapon functioned perfectly. Engaged German infantry at approximately 75 yards. Stock remained solid throughout firefight. No malfunctions, no damage after 3 days of combat operations. Similar reports flood in from other units. The folding stock performs exactly as designed. More importantly, the weapon damage rate drops dramatically. In Operation Market Garden, only 4% of carbines equipped with folding stocks suffer any damage during the jump, compared to 28% of standard wooden-stocked carbines used by units that hadn't received the new equipment yet. The Ordnance Department takes notice. In October 1944, they expand the production order to 50,000 units. By November, multiple contractors are producing folding stocks. By December, the design is standardized as the stock carbine folding M1A1. But the folding stock's value extends beyond durability. Soldiers quickly discover tactical advantages nobody anticipated. The compact size with the stock folded makes the carbine ideal for vehicle crews, particularly tank commanders who need to operate in confined turrets. Scouts and reconnaissance troops appreciate the ability to carry the weapon unobtrusively. And in urban combat, the folding stock allows soldiers to fire from positions impossible with the longer wooden-stocked version. In December 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, these advantages prove critical. Staff Sergeant Paul Miller of the 101st Airborne defending Bastogne reports engaging German infantry from inside a damaged building. "The folding stock let me shoot through a window barely 12 inches wide. A regular carbine would have been useless. I estimate I took out 6 Germans from that position before they forced me to withdraw." The German perspective reveals the weapon's psychological impact. After the war, captured German documents and interrogations of Wehrmacht soldiers provide fascinating insights. A report from the 2nd Panzer Division, dated January 1945, describes encounters with American paratroopers. Enemy paratroopers are now equipped with a new variant of their carbine rifle. The weapon has a metal folding stock that allows compact carry. Our intelligence suggests this modification was developed specifically for airborne operations. The weapon appears highly effective in close combat and urban warfare. Soldiers report that American paratroopers can deploy and fire this weapon with remarkable speed. One German paratrooper, Hauptmann Captain Klaus Weber of the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, captured in March 1945, is more direct in his assessment. "The American folding stock carbine is superior to our FG-42 in reliability and ease of use. If we had such a weapon in sufficient numbers, our airborne operations would have been far more effective." The combat data becomes overwhelming by early 1945. Analysis of after-action reports from January through March 1945 shows that units equipped with folding stock carbines experienced 89% fewer weapon malfunctions during airborne operations compared to units with standard stocks. And in ground combat, the folding stock shows no decrease in accuracy or reliability compared to the wooden stock. And in several categories, particularly urban warfare, it performs measurably better. The kill ratio statistics are particularly striking in close-quarters combat situations, engagement ranges under 50 yards.
Soldiers equipped with folding stock carbines achieve 23% more enemy kills per engagement than those with standard carbines. This isn't because the weapon is more lethal, it fires the same ammunition, but because the compact design allows soldiers to bring the weapon into action faster and maneuver more effectively in confined spaces. Lives saved is harder to quantify precisely, but military analysts make reasonable estimates. If weapon damage rates had remained at 23% during major airborne operations from D-Day through the end of the war, approximately 3,400 additional paratroopers would have landed in combat zones with non-functional primary weapons. Historical casualty data suggests that paratroopers without functional rifles were 3.7 times more likely to be killed or captured in the first hour after landing. Using these figures, analysts estimate the folding stock prevented between 800 and 1,200 American combat deaths. By April 1945, production reaches full scale. Over 140,000 folding stocks have been manufactured. The design is approved for all airborne units and is being issued to tank crews, military police, and other specialized forces. Orders are placed for an additional 500,000 units to support the planned invasion of Japan. Then, in August 1945, the war ends. Japan surrenders. The massive production orders are canceled, but the M1A1 carbine with folding stock has proven itself beyond doubt. It remains in service with airborne units through the post-war period.
The story of how this weapon influenced modern military design is fascinating, and we've got more incredible engineering stories coming up. If you want to support this channel and get early access to videos like this, check out our Patreon link in the description. Your support helps us research these forgotten stories and bring them to life. The M1A1 carbine sees extensive combat in Korea. From 1950 to 1953, American paratroopers jumping into frozen mountains and rice paddies carry Samson's folding stock design. The weapon performs flawlessly in conditions ranging from -30-degree winters to humid summer monsoons. Production resumes with another 150,000 folding stocks manufactured during the Korean War. In Vietnam, the M1A1 remains in service with Special Operations Forces and South Vietnamese airborne units well into the 1960s, even as the M16 rifle begins replacing it as the standard American infantry weapon. Advisors and Special Forces soldiers appreciate the carbine's reliability and the folding stock's compactness for jungle operations. The total production numbers tell the story of the design's success. Between 1944 and 1973, when the M1 carbine finally leaves U.S. military service, approximately 620,000 folding stocks are manufactured. The design is licensed to numerous foreign militaries. Modified versions appear on carbines used by French, Italian, South Korean, and dozens of other armies worldwide. Modern military small arms still reflect Samson's innovation. The concept of a folding or collapsing stock for compact carry and specialized operations is now standard.
The M4 carbine, the current primary weapon of U.S. forces, features a telescoping stock that serves the same purpose Samson's design addressed in 1944.
The AK-47 and its variants include folding stock versions. Nearly every modern military rifle has a compact variant with a folding or collapsing stock. Frederick Samson never sought fame for his invention. After the war, he returned to automotive engineering at General Motors. He held several patents for transmission components and engine designs, but rarely mentioned his wartime work on the carbine stock. When the Ordnance Department offered him a civilian decoration in 1946, he declined, saying the credit belonged to the soldiers who used the weapon, not the engineer who designed it. Colonel Studler, who championed Samson's design against bureaucratic opposition, retired from the Army in 1954 with the rank of Brigadier General. In his memoirs published in 1962, he wrote, "The folding carbine stock taught me that good ideas can come from anywhere. The expert consensus is often wrong, and sometimes the most important thing a leader can do is listen to someone with no credentials except common sense and determination." In 1967, at a reunion of the 101st Airborne Division, a group of veterans presented Samson with a plaque. The inscription read, "To Fred Samson, who gave us a weapon we could trust. Because of you, we came home." Samson, then 57 years old, reportedly wept when he read it. He died in 1983 at 73 years old, largely unknown outside military collectors' circles.
His obituary in the Dayton Daily News mentioned his 40-year career at General Motors, but said nothing about the folding carbine stock that saved hundreds of lives and influenced military small arms design for generations. The lessons of Samson's story resonate beyond military history. Innovation often comes from unexpected sources. The automotive engineer with no military experience saw a problem that career weapons designers missed. He had the courage to challenge expert consensus and the determination to fight bureaucratic inertia. His success depended on finding the right champion. Without Colonel Studler's willingness to challenge his own organization, Samson's design would have died in a filing cabinet. Leadership sometimes means overruling the experts and taking a risk on an outsider's idea. The story also demonstrates the cost of bureaucratic resistance to change. If Samson's design had been adopted in 1943 when he first proposed it, hundreds of additional lives might have been saved during the D-Day invasion. Organizations that reject innovation because it challenges established procedures pay a price, sometimes measured in human lives. Today, original M1A1 carbines with folding stocks are prized collector's items. They sell for 3 to 4 times the price of standard M1 carbines. Military museums display them as examples of American ingenuity during World War II. The design is still being manufactured by civilian companies for the collector and sport shooting markets. But the weapon's real legacy isn't in museums or collections, it's in the principle that Samson proved. When something isn't working, when lives are at stake, when the experts say impossible, sometimes the right answer comes from someone willing to ignore the consensus and build a better solution. In the hedgerows of Normandy, the frozen mountains of Korea, and the jungles of Vietnam, American soldiers carried a weapon that worked because one engineer refused to accept that broken rifles were just part of airborne operations. That stubborn refusal to accept the unacceptable, that's the real story of the folding carbine stock. And that's a lesson worth remembering. Whether you're designing weapons, building businesses, or just trying to solve a problem everyone else has given up on. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is ignore the experts and build the damn thing anyway.